Attention, everybody. The views and opinions expressed on the show are not necessarily those of X Ministry, X Media Group, and/or its affiliate and supported ministries and/or nonprofits.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our walk through the book of Proverbs. This episode is about chapter 21, and chapter 21 contains probably one of my most favorite de-stressing verses. Now, beginning in, say, the high school era of a person's life, there is a marked increase in stress, and the level of stress that the individual will begin to feel. And there are multiple reasons for this. One is that you're not a child, per se, anymore, and you're becoming aware of the world, and quite honestly, you're becoming more aware of the issues of your day. And another reason is that, in addition to not being a child anymore, you're becoming aware of the profound influence that past decisions and even past generations have had upon the current issues that you are now facing. And that current time in which you live is influenced heavily by past decisions made by past generations, whether for good or bad. And this leads to yet another realization that your present will become your past. So in other words, there is a growing awareness of the marked ramifications of your decisions, of the future ramifications of your current choices. So it is a time, and it should be a time, of a marked increase of personal initiative, of activity, whether it's like occupational training, spiritual development, political initiative. You are weaning off the carelessness. In other words, you do not experience the care or responsibility for certain things, the carelessness of childhood, and into the more cautious and responsibility-centered lifestyle that represents adulthood. And so, in other words, you actually are feeling more stress, but it is a healthy and even a natural kind of stress. So let's define the word stress, and it is defined as follows: pressure placed upon an object, and the object outputs a response to the pressure or stress placed upon it. So the object that we are talking about today, the object in the definition here for today, is you. And the pressure or stress that is being placed on the object, which is you, is life. It is life. So, for example, you experience real pressure of having financial forethought for the future, of financial independence. If you are younger and looking toward that, you are facing the responsibility and for which you have to plan. And then there are also emotional expectations put upon you. Now, when you're 2, temper tantrums are not necessarily okay, but they are expected because you are 2. And they are hopefully corrected. And you are helped to not behave that way as often and eventually not throw temper tantrums. However, when you're 12, you don't get to have the same emotional meltdowns that you had when you were 2. And if you're 22, why, the results of a temper tantrum would be far more devastating. So, moving forward in a person's life, say they have children, there are legitimate demands that a child has upon the parent, be it in their time, their money, their resources, their energy, their emotional support. They have every right to expect love and care over their future. And the same goes for relationships between spouses. There are legitimate demands that they have of each other, be it love, fidelity, etc., etc. And neither of these examples are bad stress, bad demands. In fact, they're natural and quite healthy and honestly self-evident. So, while these stressors are not bad, they are in fact real pressures. Now, stress, real pressure, can be a healthy motivation and normally is what drives us toward maturity. Now, in a past episode, we talked about how to address the issue of having too much stress when we had the topic of overcommitment. We covered that issue. Now, you will never, this side of heaven, eliminate all stress, because that would mean abdicating yourself from responsibilities that are in fact yours. You will have responsibilities, and responsibilities come with pressures and deadlines, for example. And managing these real pressures are what we are going to talk about today. That's the issues we're going to address. So how to de-stress, in general, against normal, natural, healthy, and real pressures, whether it's getting good grades in school or just very, very big, broad terms of having a character of integrity. That's what we're going to cover today, and we are in chapter 21 of the book of Proverbs. Let's begin in verse 31. Proverbs 21:31. It says this very, very well-known verse, but we're going to talk about it today, and it says the following: "The horse is prepared against the day of battle, but safety," also translated as deliverance, salvation, and help, "is of the Lord." Beautiful verse. The horse is prepared against the day of battle, but safety is of the Lord. Now, there are a lot of things that you can say about this verse, and there are many appropriate applications of this scripture. But for today's topic, I'm just going to highlight 2 points. We can count to 2. 1, 2, 2 points for this topic of how this verse relates to it. Number one of 2. Okay. Number 1 says this: the horse is prepared against the day of battle. Now, for analogy's sake, let's make the day of battle life. And the sermon that we will not get into today is that life is a battle. So we're going to just wave at that topic, but we're not going to cover it. And so let's make the horse in this verse you. Yes, you are the horse in this verse for today. Now, in the ancient world, the horse was the symbol of elite military power. If you watch any period movies, whether they are even fantasy, sometimes fictional, completely fictional movies, they will many times, not always, but many times have some scene to where the infantry is bunkered down, hoping and praying that the cavalry will arrive, right? Classic scene, right? Because in those days, in more of the ancient times, horses were owned by common people, but it was far more rare. Rather, horses were generally always, in a broad sense, the possession primarily of nobility. And they were seen as the expression in ancient texts. They were the ancient expression of indicating the might of a king. So, the day of battle is life, and the horse is you. So the verse says this. Let me read it again. The horse is prepared against the day of battle. In other words, you do have responsibilities when you are facing life, and you do have to prepare for it. And failure to responsibly prepare for meeting an enemy on the battlefield will result in a catastrophic, devastating loss of life, wouldn't it? And in like manner, failure to responsibly prepare to meet the general demands of life and to take it a step further, the battles, be it morally or politically, for example, of your day, will result in a catastrophic, devastating loss of life. And now this loss of life can be figurative, general, specific, not just literal thing. It could be misused and wasted time, missed opportunities. Those hurt. It could be the weakness of resolve to battle morality and to press into having a character of worth. Now, the phrase, the horse is prepared against the day of battle, it's practically imperative in its grammatical structure. The horse is prepared against the day of battle. It's practically imperative in the grammatical sense. So the underlying principle of this first phrase here is be prepared. There is a battle. Be prepared against real stress that you will be facing, that will be, quite honestly, in your face, on your back, weighing on your shoulders. Be prepared. That is point one. How many did we have today? 2. So let's go on to our last and second point for the day. And the second point for this chapter is the following. Now, this is the part where I get into the fact that this is one of my favorite de-stressing verses. And it is a key to being calm in the storm and restful in the chaos. And the second part of this verse says, horse is prepared against the day of battle, but safety, also deliverance, salvation, and help and victory is of the Lord. Now I'm going to talk about Job for just a few minutes. Okay? Job. Now in Job 39:19 through 25, we're going to get around to that section of scripture. Job experienced a lot of real pressure. He experienced real loss. He experienced real disappointment. He experienced real grief. Real. Now, a subpoint to this is that if there's any person, if there's any being that deserves the Teacher of the Year award or the Teacher of the Forever award, it would be God. Because He is all-knowing. He created everything. So He is the best teacher ever. For real. So being all-knowing, He would know what the fundamental issue is to any situation that would need to be addressed to fundamentally answer that problem. Now, in Job's case, because we're talking about Job right now, the answer that the best teacher of the year, that the teacher of the universe gave to Job's real stress, to his real pressure, was not God telling him that He would supernaturally restore everything he lost. Now, as a finite human being, it's easy to think that that revelation would have been the fundamental answer that would have given comfort to the man, that it would have given him peace. But that is not the answer God gave. God didn't tell him he was going to restore everything back. We know what happened because we read the end of the book. God didn't tell him. So, if God didn't tell him that, that must not have been the fundamental answer to the fundamental issue. Instead, what does God do? Instead, God schools Job by asking him many rhetorical questions that Job obviously knew the answer to. I mean, it's just like a parent asking a child, do you think you should have had your hand in the cookie jar? And the child obviously knows the answer. No. Well, God used rhetorical questions here about his own creation. He asked him many rhetorical questions that Job obviously knew the answer to. But God was trying to make a point and trying to get it into not just to Job's head, but into Job's spirit, the following issue. And it was, he was trying to show him just how big God was. Now, we've all seen shirts and cups and first one marketing thing and another that has the little slogan. It says, relax, I got this, and then it's signed God. So God did not reveal to Job that he would get everything back and multiplied. No, the answer that the best teacher of the universe gave was, I'm bigger than you. I got this. I'm bigger than you. Relax. I got this. I'm God. I created all this. That was the answer that God gave to the intense emotional stress and agony. Yep. Yeah, it was. I'm big. I'm big. I'm powerful. Let's read a section from Job. Job 39, 19 through 25 says the following. One of those rhetorical questions that he was asking Job. Hast thou given the horse strength? Remember the horse that's been prepared for battle. Have you given the horse strength? Have you strengthened yourself? Oh, you horse. Remember, you're the horse for our analogy today. Can you give yourself strength? Have you clothed his neck with thunder? Can you make him afraid as a grasshopper? The glory of his nostrils is terrible. He paws in the valley and rejoices in his strength. He goes on to meet armed men. He mocks at fear, and he is not affrighted. Neither turns he back from the sword. The quiver rattleth against him, and the spear and the shield. But yet he swallows the ground with the fierceness and rage. Neither believes he that it's the sound of the trumpet. And he says to the trumpets, ha, ha! And he smelleth the battle afar off, the thunder of captains and the shouting. That horse sounds pretty confident. Sounds pretty confident. And the question is, does the horse have strength in himself, or is God the one that gave the horse strength? That fearlessness in the face of battle. Even the royal might that the horse represented by this horse, was made by me, God is saying. And the creation cannot be greater than the Creator. I'm powerful, God is saying. Relax, I got this. Now you as the horse have legitimate responsibilities, but even your strength comes from me. Yeshua, Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branch. Now branches have the responsibility of yielding and bearing fruit, yes. But even that comes from the vine. Yeshua continued, without me, you can do how much? Nothing. As my dad says, he always likes to preach it, without me, you can do precisely nothing. I'm powerful. I got this. So the knowledge, think of this, the knowledge of God's goodness and power. Let me say that again. The knowledge of God's goodness and power will bring you more rest than any other one thing. Now there's a song that's called Total Praise. And it says, who is the source of my strength? Now as humans, we have the power of choice. We can choose to make the source of our strength ourselves. Or we can choose to draw from the vine. Lord, help us to apply this to our lives. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye. Hello, this episode we are in chapter 22 in the book of Proverbs. Approximately 1959, my dad took an introduction to speech class in high school, sophomore year. And this class was part of the core curriculum that everyone had to take their sophomore year. So it was a large class numerically. He gave a speech in the class over a topic that was actually rarely, as in his words, rarely talked about in the media at the time. And it existed, but it was not part of the national discussion. And he happened across a few articles about this issue and did discover this more rare topic and was convinced that it would make a very compelling speech for his class. So he researched more and prepared his speech, and the day came for him to deliver it in front of class. And so when it was his turn, he stood up, walked to the front to give his speech. And he was sure of his work. He had found concrete evidence to support his thesis, and he had all of his facts there to present his case for his speech. However, he was shocked by the reaction of the majority of his classmates. Now, most of the time, when you are in a class setting such as that, your peers are either disinterested and bored, and maybe not bored with you, but bored with the class in general because they don't really want to be there, but they have to be there. And they are only there because they have to be. Or your peers are passively interested. They're maybe looking at you, but their mind's elsewhere because they're maybe going to be the one that's up next and they have to give their presentation. But to his speech, they did neither of these two things. So he had given his introduction and he told then his thesis statement. Now, besides the teacher and just a very, very few students in the room, virtually everyone in the classroom reacted like he had just told the funniest joke in the entire world. They doubled over. They were laughing loudly, beating on their desks in their reaction, just finding it so hilarious. Now, he was very taken back and he was very confused. I mean, they were practically rolling in the floors like he had said the dumbest thing in the world. So he rechecked his introductory notes and thinking, what in the world did I say that was funny? All that he had done was relate a true story he had found in an article about a family that had been killed in a tragic car accident. I mean, there's nothing funny about that. I mean, they had been broadsided at a traffic light by a drunk driver. That's not funny. That's not funny at all. But they had started laughing when he had made his thesis statement, so he rechecked that, and his thesis statement was the following. These deaths were a result of driving under the influence of alcohol. And at that, his peer group started laughing hysterically. Now, I am told that the laws concerning drunk driving at that time were not so precise as we have today. Maybe because it was considered self-evident responsibility. Don't behave recklessly in a way that could endanger you or others. But among the youths of that, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll coming on then in 59, maybe that responsibility was not so self-evident to the upcoming generation then. So Proverbs 22, verse 3 is where we're going to begin today. And it says the following. A prudent or wise man foresees evil and hides himself. And then it goes on, but the simple pass on and are punished. And this same Proverbs is repeated virtually word for word in chapter 27, verse 12. It says, a prudent man foreseeth evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Almost exactly the exact same verse. And, excuse me, the pulpit commentary says the following. Actually, no, let's wait for that. So this episode's topic, we're going to really talk about foresight. Now, foresight is defined as the following. The ability to predict or the action of predicting what will happen or be needed in the future. Used in a sentence, he had the foresight to check that his escape route was clear. Synonyms include planning, far-sightedness, vision, anticipation, prudence, care, caution, precaution, readiness, or preparedness. Now, this verse describes that foresight is an attribute of wisdom. In Bible lingo, the fruit of the Spirit is wisdom in a very broad sense. It's the fruit of the Spirit is a manifestation of the Spirit of wisdom. We won't get too deep into that. Now, foresight is a cross-cultural phenomenon. There's a Spanish proverb that says this: that which the fool does in the end, the wise does at the beginning. And then there's a Cornish proverb that says this: he who will not be ruled by the rudder, in other words, heed a small correction, must be ruled by the rock, where it inevitably will crash down on him and destroy it. So, now let's read the pulpit commentary that relates it so simply. I'm just going to read it. It says, number 1, where it says the prudent or wise man foresees evil and hides himself. It says this about that section. The subject, or the first clause, in this is singular in number. For a really prudent man is a comparatively rare being. And then the second clause is plural, but the simple pass on and are punished. Now, this teaches us that there are many people found for one prudent or wise person. In other words, this verse is highlighting the difference between the many and the few. Highlighting the difference between the many and the few. And that's what the pulpit commentary says. So, those who were doubled over in laughter did not foresee the evil that was being spoken of. Versus those who were not laughing, who saw the potential evil there. Just like the spies that Moses sent out into the land, Caleb and Joshua versus all of the others, the narrow gate versus the broad gate, the 3 Hebrew children versus everyone else that went to Babylon, the whole world versus the 8 people that got in the ark. Noah had foresight. It says in Hebrews 11:7, it says, by faith Noah, being warned of God of things not yet seen, foresight, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his household, by the which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. Now, here is the principle of this verse and all these other examples. Foresight is what divides the many from the few. It's the I'm going to study now versus I foresee there is a test I need to pass. It is I'm not going to mouth off now. I'm going to, as we've covered in a previous episode, I'm going to foresee the evil and keep my mouth shut. It's I'm not going to spend my time on frivolous endeavors. I'm going to develop my talents and abilities because I foresee the time in which I will need to support myself and I want independence. Parents discipline their children because they foresee the child's adulthood. I'm not going to partake of this or that or whatever that my peer group is because I foresee that it does not please God. I am going to live my life according to His will and His commandments because I foresee that I will answer to the Almighty Creator of heaven and earth on Judgment Day for every single thing I do and say. So, the few versus the many. Now, the opinion of your peer group, whatever peer group that is, old, young, doesn't matter. Whatever your peer group is, could be the culture around you, which includes all generations. The culture around you. It is fluid. It changes on innumerable factors. You cannot live your life or guide your heart, as we've talked about in a previous episode. And you cannot live your morality based upon and according to the public opinion because that changes. Much like it has changed regarding drinking and driving of all things. Now, I have to say, growing up in a generation that saw all sorts of commercials about don't drink and drive, it's incomprehensible to me. But it existed and it happened. There was a generation that arose, unlike the one before it and unlike the one after it, that decided that that was okay behavior. It was safe or cool to do that. Or whatever the word was back in 59. So tell me, did the fact that that peer group that my father was a part of, and that generation at large, that they decided that that was okay, it was safe and cool, or whatever word that was the thing, did that make it safe? Did that make it okay? Did that make it responsible? Did the fact that that group ruled that, that behavior was acceptable make it safe? Did the fact that that peer group, which my father was telling me about, that the sex, drugs, and alcohol lifestyle was cool, did that make it not a destructive lifestyle? Proverbs 14:16 says the following: a wise man feareth and departeth from evil, but a fool rages and is confident. Beating on the table so confident. Let me finish the story that my dad told me about his intro to speech class in 1959. There were those in that class, actual individuals that were doubled over in laughter, that did not live to see their high school graduation. That instead of being alive and having a full life from approximately 1960 until now, they have been dead from 1960 until now because of drinking and driving or being in the car with those who did. It's been a while since 1960. It's been a while. It's a long time to be dead. That's a lot of life missed. There were those in that class that he spoke of those doubled over laughing and so confident that instead of being alive and full of life since approximately 1960 until now, have been completely, irreversibly paralyzed from 1960 until now because of drinking and driving or being in the car with those who did. That's a lot of, it's been a long time since 1960. It's a long time to be paralyzed. Did public opinion or groupthink come into the morgue and give them their life back? Did public opinion or groupthink come into the hospital and give them an undamaged body back? I grant you these are extreme examples. I grant you that. But they are extremely true. Because it's applicable everywhere. People waste a lot of time doing worthless things because those worthless things are popular. And when these people run into life obstacles and realize they should have applied themselves, popular opinion and thought is not going to come back and give them that wasted time of their life back. People do a lot of things that they know or once knew, that's a whole nother topic, was wrong simply because they're not strong enough to be different. People do a lot of things that they know or once knew was wrong because they're not strong enough to be different. Now the word says the Lord's people are to be called peculiar, as in separated or called out. And that's hard when you're standing in front of the class of life, like wisdom standing at the gate, as we've talked about in previous episodes, calling unto the men of the city, trying to give them words of life, and they mock you. Double over laughing. When you try to give them salt, something that has true worth and value, as we've talked about in previous episodes, and they don't take it and don't value it as that which has the most worth. And you're confused and you're like, what did I say? That was funny. I was being very serious about the foresight that I see coming down the road of things that I'm trying to warn you about. Why don't they see the danger? Now, it is natural and spiritual insanity to laugh at real danger. And the people who laugh at real spiritual or even natural danger are those who have a false sense of security. A very false sense of security, because the Bible says their consciousness has been seared, as it were. It says like by a hot iron. And the searing of that conscience can happen because of a continual rebellion or strong drink, so to speak, like the searing effects of drinking in that peer pressure, as it were, or public opinion. But on Judgment Day, when you're standing before God, the law office of group think and public opinion is not going to come in and represent your case. However, those who had the foresight to hire a Jewish carpenter as their lawyer and followed his instructions, there'll be those will be just fine. So I've spent my time presenting the topic, and I could spend twice as long presenting the solution, but again, I like the in a nutshell type of answers, especially for this short format. If you're feeling not included or left out, different or rejected, it's okay. It's okay. You're in good company. You're in good company. The key is to keep your eyes focused on the big picture. Keep your foresight. Use it. Focus on it. And focus on the finish line. Focus on the finish line. Because foresight is the difference between the few and the many. Lord, help us to apply this to our lives. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.